I'm James Lynch, and this is my stock report for UFC Houston, taking a look at the biggest winners and losers from the event. And this is an easy one. Biggest stock riser on this card as I refresh Tapology. It's got to be Sean Strickland. What a performance this was. You know, I talked about the odds being off. I thought this fight was going the distance. I really did think this was going to be a close fight, and it wasn't. Sean Strickland dominated this fight, in my opinion, and to go out there and get a TKO finish like this over Fluffy, who's fought guys that have good power, like Michel Pereira and other guys that, you know, can really slug it out, is super impressive here. I talked about on the pre-show that I thought, I know that Sean was injured going into that DDP fight, so was expecting a better version, but I think for him to go out there, to me, this is an A-plus performance here from Sean Strickland. It puts him back in contention for the middleweight title. I know he just fought for it, but you know, again, like this is the Paramount era. Anything can happen at this point as far as the matchmaking goes. And I would not be shocked at all if the UFC just decides to give Strickland the fight with Khamzat Chimaev at 185, if that's an option. They haven't booked the Imavov fight, right? So it just makes me think that there could be a lot in the open there. But just again, very good performance here from Strickland. For Anthony Hernandez, we'll talk about him a little bit later on this, but I wonder if we can get some stats for Strickland here real quick, just kind of taking a look at the fight itself, because I imagine the strikes certainly did favor Strickland even in that first round. Yeah, look at this. Look at the strike differential in this fight here. 110 to 55, so very impressive here. Again, you know, 3 rounds, you know, wins all the rounds there by the strikes and everything like that. Lands 9 of 14 body kicks. Actually, Fluffy landed some good body shots himself. The leg kicks were 8 for 8 for Strickland, and even got, you know, 2 of 3 clinch and 7 of 8 on the ground as well. Super impressive there. Hernandez, the one takedown he did go for was stuffed by Strickland, so just super impressed with this performance. Again, Sean Strickland getting it done by knockout over Anthony Hernandez, easily the biggest stock riser on this card. Okay, second biggest stock riser on this card, not a huge surprise here. It's got to be Euros Medic. Jeff Neal's only been knocked out one time in the UFC, and that was his last fight prior to this one, and that was against Carlos Prates. But for Medic to do this in the co-main event, the big thing for me is the knockout win streak he's got going. 3 straight first round knockout wins. You know, honestly, when I saw Medic lose a couple fights back to Puna Soriano, and when he lost to Mirbek Olerbai, I was like, okay, it's probably not going to, you know, go very far here, but he's got new life here. And to beat Jeff Neal, not just to beat him, but to knock him out in the first round, super impressive. This may get him in the rankings. We'll see. I mean, he just knocked out a ranked opponent here in Jeff Neal. He's going to get a big fight next after this regardless. 32 years old, you know, right in the prime of his career right now. I think Euros Medic is an extremely exciting guy to watch and someone we got to keep an eye on. His stock certainly goes up with this victory. Okay, third biggest stock riser, not a huge surprise either. Another guy who got a big knockout here, and that was Costa. First fighter to finish Dan Ige. Think about that. Think of who Dan Ige's fought in his career. This, you know, he's a Hawaiian guy. It's like Max Holloway, right? These Hawaiians, they're tough to finish. Look at all the fights that Dan Ige's had. 32 career fights, and he's never been finished, and Costa's the first guy to do it, and he does it in the first round too. That's what was super impressive about what Costa was able to do in this fight. He's on quite the roll. Remember the Steve Garcia knockout? He hasn't looked back since then. And some of these knockouts too, like again, Feely, Charrier, Dan Ige, these are all really good wins here. So Costa, is he the dark horse at 145? He might be. I certainly think he's got a case for it, but I don't think he is anymore with this win. Costa getting it done. First round finish over Dan Ige, one of the big stock risers on this card. Coming in at number 3, and then I'll give an honorable mention, and I only give him an honorable mention just because, you know, the odds were certainly favoring him, and that's Jacoby Smith. He was a big favorite on this card, but it's just the way he finished this fight. There's a lot of hype on him, 11-0. Yeah, he was a minus 325 favorite. I'll give him the honorable mention just because, you know, these are the type of highlights that are going to keep racking up and are going to get people excited about his future in the welterweight division. Jacoby Smith, very good performance here against Josiah Harrell, who I know, again, was a switch-up an opponent, but good for Smith getting it done. He's definitely a stock riser on this card. Okay, let's continue on with the stock droppers on this card, and biggest stock dropper on this card has got to be Anthony Hernandez. Now, it's more of a context thing, although this was a pretty one-sided fight in the main event. 8-fight win streak. If Hernandez won this, he was going to be in title contention without question. In fact, there was talks even prior to him pulling out of the RDR fight that he might have been next in line for the title over Imavov. There was talk about that. Tough loss. Yeah, it just is. Because again, you know, people will point to the fact he hasn't fought a lot of good opposition, and that was a big narrative going into this fight, but he's still finishing a lot of those guys. You know, the Brennan Allen fight, it would have been nice to see him get a finish there, but he finishes Delije, finishes Pereira, Kopylov. Good learning experience for him. Again, we've seen guys lose fights close to the top, and then they come back even better. And even Hernandez himself said in the post-fight interview that, you know, again, last time he lost, like he did to Kevin Holland back in 2020, he came back and went on an 8-fight win streak. So I certainly don't doubt that. By the way, I forgot to mention this in the stock risers. Sean Strickland's post-fight speech, going kind of out of character, so to speak, and giving props to Fluffy, I thought was awesome. You hear a lot of that in the gym at Extreme Couture. You know, obviously Strickland says some things that, you know, I don't agree with. And obviously there's things that really upset fans that he says, but deep down, I think this is a guy who does care about other fighters. And, you know, I thought that was really cool of him giving Fluffy the props there. So I wanted to mention that because I thought the post-fight speach was good there. Okay, so Hernandez, biggest stock dropper. Second biggest stock dropper. This was a real tough one for a lot of people, including myself, because I did the interview with him beforehand. It's Jeff Neal. Tough, man. Guy turns his life around, right? Talked about, you know, becoming sober and sobriety and all that good stuff. And, you know, and I shouldn't say good stuff. I mean, it's a very serious thing, addiction, but, you know, he overcomes addiction and he gets knocked out in this fight. This was a tough one for Jeff. I don't know where Jeff goes from here because, you know, again, while I just talked about how great Medic is and all that, you know, it's back-to-back knockout losses, and he fits sort of the age category of the decline here. He's going to be 36 in August. That's a really tough thing here for Jeff Neal to sort of get back to where he needs to get to. I think at this point, Neal is unfortunately going to be the guy the UFC is going to use to build up other fighters. He's kind of in that Leon Edwards territory, right? They're going to start, I mean, he just got an unranked guy. Imagine now he's going to get the same thing after this. But if we keep seeing fights where he gets finished like this, it's going to be sort of a bad... you know, we're heading down a bad path here with Jeff Neal. Now, the thing is, UFC will never release him anytime soon because he's exciting. But yeah, when you start racking up knockout losses, not good. So Jeff Neal, tough stock dropper on this card. And then you got to go with Dan Ige as well. Same thing. I actually tried to do an interview with Dan Ige before this one. And I love this from Dan. He tells me, hey, listen, I'm not doing any media. I'm really focusing on this fight. I know how badly Dan Ige wanted this fight. He wanted this win, I should say. But he gets knocked out. He's already off a couple losses, losing 3 of his last 4. The Pitbull fight was one a lot of people thought he was going to win, and he ends up getting knocked out here. He's 34. It's tough. I just don't know where Ige goes from here, and it's the same sort of thing with Jeff Neal. Ige is going to be used, I think, going forward to build up other guys, your contender series winners, guys that they're trying to build up in the 145-pound division. So these are all things to kind of keep in mind when you're looking at some of these losses here. Tough one there for Dan Ige. And a quick honorable mention, only because he was a favorite and he lost, Yadir DeVille. In fact, this should probably be a Isaac Dolgarian stock dropper, although I talked about him before, but what a terrible performance this was in this fight. And this was a guy that was favored. Jordan Levitt, a lot of people don't think very highly of him. He was minus 420. He has to be mentioned on here. And honestly, if it wasn't for like Ige and Neal and Hernandez and these guys being a bit more notable in their respective weight classes, DeVille would easily be the biggest stock dropper because this was just a terrible performance from here. Not a good fight. And it makes the Dolgarian thing look even worse because Dolgarian looked bad against Deval. And we know now that obviously he didn't even look good in the Levitt fight. So yeah, tough night there for Deval. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. So let me know your top 3 stock droppers and top 3 stock risers in the comments below. Would love to hear from you, and let me know who you think stock went up or went down. Would love to hear your opinion on this. And by the way, I'm wearing the suit because I'm doing some interviews with Cage Titans tonight. Wasn't able to go to the event in Boston. That's an entire story I'll tell another day. So yeah, that's why I'm all nicely dressed up here. But yeah, let me know in the comments your stock risers, stock droppers. Would love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.